Welcome and thank you for joining us today for the Older Americans webinar on considering a financial caregiver. My name is Bryce Geiling and I'll be your WebEx host. Before I turn today's webinar to our presenters, I'd like to share a few housekeeping items. All attendees have been muted upon entry and will remain muted for the duration of the webinar. Please submit your questions throughout the presentation in the Q&A or chat panel and select all panelists from the drop-down. We will ask them on your behalf during the Q&A portion of the webinar. If you require closed captioning, please refer to the link posted in the chat box, Media Viewer panel. This webinar is being recorded. And lastly, we do have a quick poll that should appear on the right side of your screen, so please take a moment to complete that before we start. And now I'd like to turn it over to Chanel.
Great, thank you, Bryce. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on today's webinar, Considering a Financial Caregiver, Know Your Options. As Bryce mentioned before, this webinar is being recorded. If you do not consent to the recording, please do disconnect at this time. A recorded version of today's presentation will be available on our website in about 1 week. With that, I would like to introduce you to today's speakers. We have Lisa Schifferly, Senior Policy Analyst for the Office for Older Americans, and Kate Kramer, Policy Analyst also from the Office for Older Americans. With that, Lisa, I will now turn the presentation over to you.
Thanks so much, Chanel, and welcome everyone to the CFPB Office for Older Americans November webinar. My name is Lisa Schifferly, and I'm a Senior Policy Analyst in the CFPB's Office for Older Americans. In honor of National Family Caregivers Month, this CFPB webinar is going to focus on financial caregiving. So we want to offer a special thank you for joining us, and especially to those of you who are caregivers or who are professionals who work with caregivers. Thank you so much for the important work that you're doing. On today's webinar, we're going to highlight resources for financial caregivers, including the Managing Someone Else's Money Guides and Considering a Financial Caregiver, Know Your Options, a brand new publication. We'll share tips and tools about informal financial caregivers and formal financial caregivers, as well as factors to consider when choosing a financial caregiver. We'll discuss guardianship, power of attorney, trusted contacts, and more. In addition, we will share some highlights from our new guide, designed to help family and friends of people living in long-term care communities like skilled nursing and assisted living, to help those people prevent elder financial abuse. So we hope that the tools that we share today will help family caregivers and those who work with them. Before I begin, I have to offer this disclaimer as a federal government employee, which is that anything we say is our own opinion and does not necessarily reflect the opinion of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Now, if you're not familiar with the CFPB or the Office for Older Americans, I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about us. The Office for Older Americans engages in research, policy, and educational initiatives to help protect older consumers from financial harm. We also create tools and resources to help older consumers make sound financial decisions as they age. You can find all of our materials at consumerfinance.gov/older-americans. And as I said, today we're going to focus on the CFPB's Managing Someone Else's Money Guides, which are excellent resources to support financial caregivers. The guides can also help people start conversations with loved ones about planning for caregiving needs. So I'm particularly excited today to tell you about a new resource called Considering a Financial Caregiver, Know Your Options. We just released it earlier this year for Older Americans Month, and it's the latest piece in our Managing Someone Else's Money series. It's really important to talk about these caregiving issues now, not only because it's National Family Caregivers Month, but also because the COVID pandemic has brought caregiving issues to the forefront. During the COVID-19 pandemic, more people have been called upon to act as caregivers, as many older adults opt to stay in their homes or move in with family members instead of moving to nursing homes and assisted living. In fact, according to an AARP and National Alliance for Caregiving in the U.S. 2020 report, about 1 in 5 people in the U.S. acts as an unpaid caregiver. So let me show you what this guide looks like. This new piece is designed for people early in the caregiving process, Maybe you're just starting to notice that you or a loved one might need help with managing your finances, or maybe you're planning ahead for your own financial future. Knowing the options that you have will help you choose what works best for your particular situation. What this new publication does, and it's very short, is it just briefly gives you an overview of informal caregiving options like convenience accounts or adding a trusted contact person to your account. It also covers formal caregiving options like power of attorney, guardianship, trustee, or government fiduciary. Finally, it gives you a list of questions to help you consider who's the best person to choose as your financial caregiver. We hope you'll check it out and order copies. You can find it at consumerfinance.gov/MSEM. And I'm also going to give you a preview and walk you through what you'll find if you do go to this publication. First, as I said, it talks about informal caregiving options. An informal caregiver is just someone who helps as on an as needed basis. It's for someone who can still manage their own finances, but might just need a little help from time to time. That can include a conversation partner, a trusted contact person, or a convenience account. So let's talk about each of these options. Conversation partner is really just talking to someone about your finances. And it's very important, obviously, to make sure this is a trusted relative, friend, or professional before you give anyone an overview of your finances. You don't want to give an overview to someone who then may financially exploit you. But if you have a trusted friend or relative who you are choosing as your financial caregiver, you may want to have them come with you when you visit your bank or financial advisor, or ask the bank or broker to send a copy of your statements. Or it could be as simple as what my mother recently did, which is to sit down with me and say, here are all my accounts and here's where you can find them in case you ever do need to manage my finances. So this is really just the very initial stage of just having a conversation to prepare for the future. Another type of informal financial caregiver is a trusted contact person. Naming a trusted contact person on your brokerage account allows the financial institution to contact the trusted person in certain circumstances, like if they think you're being scammed. The important thing to know is that trusted contacts do not have access to your money. They just get notified if the financial institution sees signs of financial exploitation. So for example, if I listed my brother as my trusted contact on my account, and then I suddenly started wiring large sums of money overseas, then the financial institution would notify my brother and say, hey, you need to check in on her. So that's what a trusted contact person is, and trusted contacts are available on all brokerage accounts. Some other financial institutions like banks are starting to offer them as well. Just ask them about putting a trusted contact or emergency contact on your account. Another informal caregiving option is what's called a convenience account. This allows you to name someone to help you deposit or withdraw money and write checks. So this person does have access to your money. They can write checks, they can help you if you need help with bill paying. It's very different from a joint account because with a joint account, money is jointly owned and the joint account holder automatically gets the money when you die. Now, oftentimes people set up joint accounts when managing money because that's just what they're familiar with. But the convenience account has the added benefit that it does not change the ownership of the money in the account or give your helper the right to keep the money when you die. The money belongs only to you. So to give you an example of why you might want to use this is, say my mother wanted me to help her with bill paying and she set up a joint account. If she did and she were to pass away, then all the money would go to me, which would probably not be her intention. She'd probably want it to be split equally with my brother. So if she set up a convenience account, that would not happen. The money would not pass right to me. So it's important to know the difference between the convenience account and the joint account and set up a convenience account when appropriate. Now, those are the informal caregiving options that our new guide discusses. It also goes over formal caregivers. These are people who are officially named legally to have fiduciary duties and fiduciary authority to help you manage your money. It's basically just a legal arrangement to help you manage your money. They can be power of attorney, guardian, trustee, or government fiduciary. And I'll go into each of those in a minute because we have entire guides on each of those types of fiduciary to help you guide you through that role. But first, what I want to do is tell you a little bit more about this intro piece, considering a financial caregiver, know your options. And in addition to having the informal and formal caregiving options laid out for you, it also offers you a list of questions to consider when you're trying to decide who should be that financial caregiver, who you're going to give that responsibility to, because this is a huge decision, and choosing the right person can help you avoid potential exploitation in the future. So think about, do I trust the person? Do I feel comfortable sharing my wishes? And will they honor those wishes? Also, are they able to take on the responsibility? What else do they have going on in their life? Maybe they'd be good, but they aren't really have enough time right now to do this. Will they make decisions in my best interest, or will they do things in their own interest? Also, are they good at managing things carefully and keeping good records? It's also a really good time to ask those hard questions like, is this somebody who has an addiction, maybe an alcohol, gambling, or drug addiction, or a mental health issue that might make them susceptible to misusing your money in the future? You don't want to choose someone that might end up in that situation. So that's what covers our new piece about considering a financial caregiver. And we also have a series of guides about managing someone else's money, which I'll highlight now. And if I could ask everyone who's not speaking to put themselves on mute, I think I hear some background noise and that might help. So I want to next tell you about the managing someone else's money guides for financial caregivers. These are these full-length guides about how to be a power of attorney, how to be a guardian, how to be a trustee, or how to be a government fiduciary. They provide tips and resources to help fiduciaries protect, invest, and manage money. They have information on identifying benefits, and they describe warning signs of financial exploitation. So if any of you are financial caregivers, you know probably better than anyone can tell you in a guide that financial caregiving is very challenging. And these two quotes here on this slide give you some idea of some of the challenges. The quote from Kristen says, even though I'm financially savvy, I had no idea where to get help, which is something that people often say. They don't know where to turn for help. And Hector's quote also says that basically sometimes it can be harder to manage someone else's money than your own. You may feel more a sense of responsibility. So that's why we've created the Managing Someone Else's Money guides. You can find them at consumerfinance.gov/MSEM, like managing someone else's money. And you also will find this intro video there. This next slide shows you what the guides look like. There's a different one for each type of financial caregiver with a different color. And I'm going to go through each of those now. But first, I want to talk a little more broadly about what is a fiduciary, and that is all four of these are different types of fiduciaries, which are just someone who's formally named to manage money or property for someone else. Power of attorney is named in a legal document. The government fiduciaries are named by the government agencies. Guardians and conservators are named by a court, and trustees can either be named in a legal document or in the court. So let's talk about each of these. First, what's a power of attorney? A power of attorney is a legal document where someone known as the principal gives someone else known as the agent legal authority to make decisions about their money or property. Often people make powers of attorney so that someone else can handle their money if they become sick or injured. In some states, it's called a durable power of attorney. In some states, it's just called power of attorney. One important thing to note is there's a power of attorney for healthcare decisions, and that is different from the financial power of attorney. Healthcare power of attorney allows someone to make healthcare and medical related decisions. Financial power of attorney allows them to make decisions over your finances. So for example, we just had a family member who recently had a serious illness, and we went to pull out his power of attorney and found out that it was only healthcare power of attorney. So there was no authority to help with his finances. So it's important for people to know about the difference, and that power of attorneys also give you control to name who you want to manage your finances. Some people are reluctant to create these documents because they feel like they're giving up control, but it actually gives you more control because you get to decide who will manage your finances when you become unable to do so. It also makes it easier for your loved ones if they are in a situation where they need to manage your finances. Now, on this slide, you'll see we have another guide for people who are government fiduciaries. For Social Security, that's called a representative payee. And for the VA, it's called a VA fiduciary. The main thing to know about these types of fiduciaries is that you only have authority to manage that person's government benefits. So if you're Social Security rep payee, you only have authority to manage their Social Security benefits. You do not have authority to manage any of the rest of their money, unless you have some other source of authority, like you're also power of attorney. And on the flip side, if you are a power of attorney, you don't automatically have authority to manage their government benefits. You have to still get appointed as representative payee or VA fiduciary. The guide explains a whole lot more about that role, but those are some of the key things to know. And what's a guardian of property? A guardian is someone that a court names to manage money and property for someone else who the court finds can't manage the money or property alone. Some states use the term conservator, some states use the term guardian, but it's the same concept. It's appointed by the court to manage your finances. To give you an example, my grandmother, when she was in her 70s, got hit by a car and was put in a coma. She did not, unfortunately, have a power of attorney. So we had to get guardianship for her and go through the court process, which meant that the court had to determine she was no longer able to manage her finances and then had to appoint who they deemed fit. It worked out fine. But in a lot of cases, for a lot of families, it would be a lot easier to have a power of attorney in place than to have to go through the guardianship process. Now, what is a trustee? We also have a guide for people who are financial caregivers under a trust, and trusts differ. What we talk about in our guides are what are called revocable living trusts, which are created through a legal document rather than through a court. And in those, someone makes you the trustee and transfers ownership or money and property to the trust. So the main thing to know about this is you can specify certain money or property to put in trust for someone to manage. Like you could say, I just want my daughter to manage my car, and I just want my son to manage this $10,000. So the trust also specifies who gets the money or property in the trust after you pass away. So the trust can give you a little more control over your money and property by specifying what money or property you want people to manage and what will happen after you pass away. Now, let's just talk quickly about what are some of the duties of a fiduciary. All of these different types of financial caregivers, the formal ones that we just talked about that have the 4 guides, these are called fiduciaries. And if you're a fiduciary, you have to act in the person's best interest. That means avoiding conflicts of interest. And the guides provide some scenarios that might pose a conflict, but to give you an idea, say that Roberto is the name of the person whose finances you're managing. A conflict of interest would happen if you make a decision about Roberto's money that may benefit someone else besides him. So, for example, say you buy a car, and use Roberto's money to buy that car, and you use it to drive him to appointments, but most of the time you drive the car just for your own needs. That is likely a conflict of interest. Or say Roberto needs repair work on his apartment and you hire your daughter to do it and pay her from Roberto's money. That also may be a conflict of interest. Even though the work needs to be done, you might be giving a special benefit to your daughter. So you really have a very strict duty to avoid conflicts of interest and act only in the person's best interest. You also have a duty to manage the money and property carefully, which can often include compiling an inventory of money, property, and debts, and investing money carefully, finding out what benefits that the person is eligible for, paying bills on time, and paying taxes if that is part of your fiduciary responsibility. You also need to keep the money and property separate. Separate means separate, so never deposit Roberto's money into your own or someone else's bank account or investment account. The guides also discuss how to title money depending on what type of fiduciary you are. Finally, last but not least, it's important to keep good records, which includes keeping receipts and notes, even for small expenses, and avoiding paying in cash. This can also help with benefits determinations and with power of attorney abuse cases. Now, what I've talked about so far has been about our national guides, our national managing someone else's money guides. But I do want to let people know that we do have some state-specific guides on managing someone else's money, and those states are listed on this slide here. So if you're in one of these states on these slides, I would encourage you to check out the state-specific guides that give the state law as well, and you can find those as well at consumerfinance.gov/MSEM. So this slide shows you that link where you can download them. You can also bulk order them for free at the link on top or at consumerfinance.gov/order. And for questions about the guides or any other questions, you can contact us at olderamericans@cfpb.gov. And now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Kate Kramer to tell you about a new guide for preventing elder financial abuse of loved ones who are in nursing homes or assisted living.
Thanks so much, Lisa, and thank you to everyone who's joined us today for the webinar. For those of us who are caregivers for loved ones who live in long-term care communities, what can we do to protect people from elder financial abuse? Well, our Office for Older Americans created the guide you see here to help people recognize the red flags of financial abuse and find out who to contact for help in different situations. There's also an accompanying handout on reporting financial abuse, which explains where and how to file reports and find resources. The guide is designed for family and friends of someone who's living in a long-term care community, but professionals of all types can also read the guides to learn about preventing financial exploitation in long-term care settings. We do have a separate guide specifically for administrators and staff of long-term care communities, which I'll talk about a bit later in today's presentation. So let's take a closer look at the type of information in this guide. The guide uses brief scenarios about a fictional person named Alma to illustrate key concepts. These scenarios provide different real-life examples of financial abuse that you might encounter with your friends, family members, or other community members. This is an example of one of those scenarios. The guide will walk you through 4 key steps to help protect older adults living in long-term care communities from financial abuse. The 4 key steps include preventing, meaning educating yourself, your loved ones, and your community; recognizing, meaning spotting those warning signs and taking action; recording, meaning documenting what you observe; and reporting, meaning tell the appropriate authorities so that they can investigate and help. This guide can help you to be ready to intervene and help someone in need. So let's talk a little bit about step 1, prevent. And step 1 means preventing financial abuse from ever occurring, or taking steps to prevent an existing situation from continuing or growing worse over time. Since financial abuse is often ongoing, early identification of a problem can help to prevent future financial losses. And today I want to highlight one part of the prevent section, which focuses on using technology. Technology can be used in many ways to help you stay connected with your loved ones, even if you can't visit them in person. For example, people who have family or friends living far away could chat with them via text messaging or video calls on a mobile device or computer. Or if your loved one can't travel to a wedding or another family gathering, you might be able to share a live stream of the event so they can join in from afar. You can also keep in touch and share photos, videos, and information with one another using social media. And you can ask your loved one's nursing home or assisted living community if they can host meetings by phone or video call to allow you or other caregivers or individuals to participate if an in-person meeting isn't feasible. And the community's team members might also be able to help set up a video call, a phone call, or internet access for your loved one. Using digital tools to visit with relatives can also expose elder financial abuse because we find that maintaining strong connections with friends and family gives us more people to talk to about any problems that we're having. So if a friend or a family member notices something that seems suspicious, they could share those concerns with a designated team member at the community or with the appropriate authorities. And as technology advances, new online and mobile services might be useful to help people manage their finances. For example, your loved one might be able to set up automatic alerts for their bank or credit union account so that they receive a notification whenever a transaction occurs or whenever the account drops below a certain balance. And financial institutions typically offer services like automatic bill pay and direct deposit for checks. And some mobile apps can also help remind either your loved one or a financial caregiver about when to pay bills or to take other actions. Your loved one's bank or credit union can share more detailed information about the options that are available to them. Now, step 2 is recognize, and it's important to recognize any potential indicators of financial exploitation that you observe, and that includes when your loved one is interacting with friends, family members, and other visitors. So the guide contains a great deal of information about different types of warning signs that might indicate financial abuse. Listed on this slide are the 6 main categories of warning signs. Within the guide, each category lists several specific red flags that you can watch out for. The guide also has detailed information about fraud and scams that target older adults, including warning signs that scammers are targeting your loved one. And if you believe that your loved one might be the target of a telephone or a mail or an online scam, consider talking to them about your concerns or offering to help them review and discard some of those communications that are coming in. To avoid identity theft, you could help your loved one add safety features like antivirus software or pop-up blockers, as well as password protection to any devices that they use. The CFPB has free educational resources that you can use to help teach your family members, friends, and other community members about warning signs, identity theft, and scam prevention. And free resources might also be available from your state attorney general's office or your local senior centers, your long-term care ombudsman, other national organizations, and federal agencies as well. It's important to keep clear and accurate records of any red flags or suspicious activities that you observe. So let's talk now about a few best practices for recording signs of suspected financial abuse. Well, number 1, it's important to speak with your loved one separately from any suspected perpetrators, of course. And your loved one might be hesitant to acknowledge someone's actions, maybe due to guilt or fear of retaliation, or they might have sympathy for the perpetrator, in particular if your loved one has rescued an adult child or another person from trouble repeatedly in the past. And additionally, older adults who come from historically marginalized groups like people of color, recent immigrants, or LGBTQ individuals might not feel comfortable reporting abuse because they may have experienced a history of discrimination by traditional institutions. But with support from a trusted advocate, sometimes someone who at first refuses to acknowledge financial abuse might later be open to talking about that experience. So it's important to have those conversations and also to pay attention to your loved one's emotions and behavior during the conversation. You can write down your notes immediately afterwards so you have an accurate record of what you talked about. And you should also write down any warning signs that you observe, including the dates, times, locations, details of any incidents, and then give that information to the authorities when you file a report. You should also keep a record of communications like phone calls, meetings, letters, and emails, and try to list the names and contact information for anyone that you speak to about your concerns. It's also good to talk to any staff members or volunteers at the assisted living community or nursing home who might have observed something, and be sure that they're also documenting each incident in their own records. Now, the final step is to report the suspected elder financial abuse to the appropriate authorities. Laws and reporting requirements are going to differ from state to state, so it's important to learn what's required in your state. You should follow the state and federal laws and report suspected elder abuse to the local authorities. If you suspect financial abuse, you can contact Adult Protective Services and law enforcement first to file a report. You can also ask whether they might know of other agencies in your area where you can get help. Then you can also contact the Long-Term Care Ombudsman to ask how they can help advocate for your loved one. The guide also contains a list of other places where you can report suspected financial abuse in specific situations, and the guide contains more information as well about each of these different agencies and what their role, responsibilities are, and what they can do to help you. Just remember, when you are making a report, you're reporting your own observations. You're not investigating a crime and you're not proving a case. So just think of your role as sharing your observations in order to enable an investigator to step in and take it from there. And we'll talk a little bit more about reporting in just a minute when I share some highlights of our new quick reference guide on reporting elder financial abuse. But first, as I mentioned, the full-length guide also provides information about who to contact for help with specific situations like the ones you see here. And it's important to understand your state's civil laws too, and advocates like your local long-term care ombudsman or your local legal aid office can help you understand this. And in some states, there are remedies beyond local adult protective services intervention and criminal sanctions, and in those states, they may have laws to help survivors of financial abuse and their attorneys to bring cases in civil court to recover money. Some states have processes where you can freeze remaining assets or make it impossible for property transfers to proceed. And in some states, banks and credit unions can delay a disbursement of funds or place a hold on a transaction if they suspect elder financial abuse, so they can have a little more time to investigate the situation and get that person some help. Additionally, you might be able to work with a legal services attorney or a private attorney to file a case in civil court to request a restraining order or an order of protection that prevents that perpetrator from contacting your loved one. This type of intervention can help to separate the perpetrator from your loved one and prevent future harm. You can visit the website you see on this slide to read our list of helpful resources, and you can take a look at that on your computer or mobile device at any time. And if you'd like to get a copy of our new guide, you can either download it from our website or you can order a print copy for free. And if you're a professional who works with older adults, or if you just want to hand out copies in your community, you can order free copies in bulk and hand them out as needed. You can keep a copy of the guide for yourself, and you can share it with people you know who live in nursing homes or assisted living communities or who have loved ones in those settings. So I hope that the guide will be helpful to you. Now, I just want to take a quick look at our new quick reference guide on reporting elder financial abuse. And like I said, both of these resources were just released last week, so we're really excited to share them with you. As we discussed earlier, family members, friends, and other community members are really in a unique position to help protect their loved ones from financial abuse. So if you suspect financial abuse, you should report those suspicions to the appropriate authorities. And this quick reference guide explains where and how to do that. You can see a couple of bullets here on this slide, which were pulled from the Where Should I Report section of the bifold. And the guide answers the following questions to help you guide yourself in the right direction and help you take steps to help resolve that situation. It asks, what is financial abuse? Where should I report financial abuse? What information do I need to file a report? What other types of help are available? What legal options might we have? And what can I do about problems with specific situations, like problems with an assisted living or nursing home team member, problems with financial caregivers, or scams? And finally, it asks, where can I find more information? Here's a screenshot that shows the what information do I need to file a report section. This section encourages you to include as much key information as possible in your report. But as I mentioned, you should still file a report even if you don't feel you have all of the details, because what you're doing is enabling the authorities to go in and investigate the situation. Then that investigating agency can work to identify what services or remedies might be appropriate to help the person who's experiencing financial abuse. So please feel free to visit our website and download this quick reference handout, or you can order copies of the handout for yourself or to hand out in your community. There's one final resource in our Preventing Elder Financial Abuse series. This is the one I mentioned earlier. This is a newly updated guide for nursing home and assisted living community administrators and staff. And this is designed to help them prevent and address financial abuse of their residents. So this can help them identify warning signs and also develop policies, procedures, and training to prevent elder financial abuse. We released the original version of this guide back in 2014, and last month in October, we released our newly updated version, which reorganized the information and added new real-life scenarios and new information about using technology, among other new topics. The guide is for, as I said, nursing home and assisted living community staff, but much of the information could be really useful in other residential settings as well, or for older adults or people with disabilities living in other types of communities. And it's printed as a spiral bound notebook to make it a little easier to keep it open on specific pages of interest and to enable staff to easily refer back to it as they're reviewing their policies and their procedures related to elder financial abuse. I just want to share a couple of quick highlights from this guide, and I wanted to start with its emphasis on establishing a team approach to financial security. The guide recommends that long-term care communities assemble a team that will form the front line on financial abuse, and they should implement a system for early and effective responses through regular meetings, case review, and coordinated action. And an effective team will promote the safety of all residents as well as the financial security of the community itself. Another key component of the guide is that it encourages communities to develop policies and practices to prevent and respond to elder financial abuse. So this could include helping new residents and their family members and caregivers to understand abuse prevention policies at move-in, and also to have policies about how the community will work together with financial to the nursing home or assisted living community and looking for signs of financial abuse if bills are not being paid. It's really important for communities to establish hiring policies and training for staff and volunteers that emphasize abuse prevention. So the guide has a list of warning signs as well as information on hosting trainings on abuse and scam prevention for residents and community members. And it also has information on collaborating with Adult Protective Services, law enforcement, the Long-Term Care Ombudsman, and other partners to fight elder financial abuse more effectively. The guide for staff also includes information on how staff can report suspected financial abuse to the appropriate authorities. And almost all states have provisions that provide immunity for good faith reporting of suspected elder activity you observed wasn't financial abuse, as long as you made your report in good faith or a similar standard that would be spelled out in your state laws. So if you're interested, please visit our website to download the guide for long-term care staff or order free print copies, and the guides for family and friends are there as well. So I'll turn it back over to Lisa now to share a few more of our free resources with you.
Thanks so much, Kate. So we want to close by letting you know about some other resources that may help you as financial caregivers or in planning your own finances. The first is called Planning for Diminished Capacity and Illness. This is a consumer advisory that the CFPB created with the Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC. And it basically helps you to plan for the future for a time when you might not be able to manage your money and property. It's a great companion to considering a financial caregiver. Know your options, the guide I talked about at the beginning of this presentation. And it's also a great conversation starter to take to talk to family members about what your plan might be for managing money when the time comes. Another resource we have at the CFPB, and this is one that we've done with the FDIC, is called Money Smart for Older Adults. And Money Smart for Older Adults is an awareness program that focuses on preventing elder financial exploitation. This is a great one if you're someone who goes out and gives presentations in the community. It offers over 2 hours of content on a variety of different scams targeting older adults, using plain language and providing action steps to how to recognize and avoid those scams. It covers things like family emergency scams, tech support scams, telephone scams, identity theft, and more. And it's available in English and in Spanish. It's really plug and play. We have an instructor guide that scripts the presentation, a slide deck you can use, and then a participant resource guide to give out to the people in the audience. The resource guide is particularly designed for older adults in 14-point font. So we would encourage you to check this out and use it as a tool for giving scam prevention presentations in your community. We also have what we call our fraud prevention handouts. You may be familiar with our fraud prevention placemats, which were originally designed for Meals on Wheels with graphics and short messages for people to recognize certain scams and avoid them. They were actually little print placemats that went underneath people's meals when they got a delivery from a place like Meals on Wheels, so that while they were eating, they could get the message in the placemat. We found they were so popular and that people were ordering them as posters and for other reasons that we've expanded them to a variety of handouts, including bookmarks, posters, and more. Again, these come in a whole variety of different topics, both in English and in Spanish. We have ones on disaster preparedness, natural disasters, and health emergency. We have one on online safety. We have them on romance scams. They can be a great companion to the Money Smart for Older Adults information. If you're giving a presentation on scams, you could also order some of these placemats to pass out at consumerfinance.gov/placemats. And all of our materials are available in bulk for free, including free shipping. The last resource I want to let you know about is consumerfinance.gov/coronavirus. This is a website that the CFPB set up during the pandemic to help people protect and manage their finances during the COVID pandemic. We actually have resources here available in English, Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, and Tagalog, and it has all sorts of topics, including scam prevention. And right now, if you are a financial caregiver, one thing you might particularly want to know about is our rental assistance finder. If someone you know or the person you're caring for is behind in their rent due to the pandemic, the rental assistance finder allows you to put in the zip code or the city and state and find out exactly where you can get rental assistance in your area. And then it even gives you the links and the phone numbers for how to contact that place to get assistance. So please do check out all of those materials at consumerfinance.gov/coronavirus. They can really help you with your financial caregiving. And in closing, I just want to encourage people to contact us in the Office for Older Americans. You can find all the materials that Kate and I discussed at consumerfinance.gov/older-americans. And you can email us at olderamericans@cfpb.gov if you'd like a copy of this presentation or have any other follow-up questions. And with that, we will take your questions now. You can put questions in the chat if you have questions for Kate and I, and we'll be happy to answer your questions now, or again, if you have something you want to contact us offline about, you can do that at olderamericans@cfpb.gov.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa and Kate, for your presentations today. We do have a few questions that have been coming in. So the first one, Lisa, is for you. They just want to clarify something. Did you say that even if someone has an overall power of attorney, including for financial matters, that person still needs to obtain a POA for government benefits?
Yes, it's not called a POA for government benefits, but essentially that's true. Even if you have a power of attorney, you are not necessarily authorized to handle that person's government benefits, meaning their Social Security benefits or their veterans benefits. If you have power of attorney and want to manage their Social Security benefits, you need to apply with Social Security to become their representative payee is what it's called. And for the VA, it's called VA fiduciary. So just having an overall blanket power of attorney doesn't give you that authority over the government benefits unless you also get the government benefits fiduciary. Of course, if you are named as power of attorney, that's often looked favorably upon by the government agency. They may say, oh, this person's already named power of attorney, so they'd probably be a good person to be the Social Security rep payee or the VA fiduciary. But you do have to take that additional step of actually getting named by the government agency in order to manage the government benefits.
Great. Thanks so much, Lisa. Kate, this next one is for you. Is there a website that financial institutions can use to report elder financial abuse?
Thanks so much, Chanel. And that's a great question. So it is really dependent on where you are. You can certainly call the Adult Protective Services hotline or call your local law enforcement non-emergency line, or of course call 911 if there's an urgent risk to someone's health or safety in order to make a report. Some Adult Protective Services also receive reports by email or through a website. It just depends where you live or how the setup is for you. But financial institutions can also report suspected elder financial exploitation using suspicious activity reports, or SARs. And so that's a way that a bank or a credit union or another type of financial institution can report to FinCEN, which is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, which receives and maintains that database of suspicious activity reports. And law enforcement can then access that suspicious activity report information to trigger new investigations or to support ongoing investigations or identify a suspected perpetrator who they might want to investigate further. And so that's a great way for financial institutions also to report suspected elder financial exploitation. And there's actually a special checkbox for elder financial exploitation on the SAR form that you can use to make that report. And we do, our Office for Older Americans has done reviews of suspicious activity report data in the past. We issued a report in 2019 where we looked at the SAR filings from 2013 to 2017 that involved elder financial exploitation. We were able to analyze the trends there. And so I would encourage you to take a look at that report. I can pop it in the chat if you're interested. But in terms of one central website where you can report elder financial abuse and it would get to the right agency, it doesn't really exist yet, although I know some communities have implemented their own software, their own systems in elder fraud prevention and response networks to share cases among case review partners like financial institutions, law enforcement, adult protective services, legal aid, and other partners. But again, that's going to depend locally where you are.
Great. Thanks so much, Kate. We've got one more question. Do you have presentations or guides on healthcare fiduciaries for older or incapacitated adults?
That's a great question. We do not have information on healthcare fiduciaries since we are a consumer financial protection agency. Our focus is on the financial aspect. But you could look online for guidance on healthcare fiduciaries, or better yet, contact an elder law attorney in your jurisdiction for help with doing that. You can find elder law attorneys, and you can also find places to report elder abuse and a whole host of other information in terms of caregiving at the elder care locator at eldercare.acl.gov. So I do want to mention that as a great resource to find your local adult protective services, to find local elder law attorneys, local legal services, and a whole lot of other information that may be helpful to you as financial caregivers.
Thank you, Lisa. That looks like we might be at the end of the questions. We do have a few more minutes left, so I encourage you to submit any more questions that you may have into the chat, and we can stick around for a few more minutes to see. Okay, it looks like we don't have anything else coming through. Bryce, or whoever has the host role, could you please go to the next slide, please? Thank you. I'd just like to thank everyone, Lisa and Kate, for sharing your expertise today. If you would like a copy of today's presentation, please do email us with your request by reaching out to us at olderamericans@cfpb.gov. And please do join us for our next webinar on December 8th for an introduction to the CFPB's Office for Older Americans at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you again to everyone who joined us today, and we hope you are able to join us for webinars in the future on a variety of topics. Thanks again, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.